Herring Review. What's going on, Yidden? Welcome back to Herring Review. I have a guest. I have Olivia here today, and we're super excited to try some wasabi creamy herring from Boobies Bagels.
That's the voice of Jeremy Urbach. He's a young Canadian content creator, and this is one of his entertaining videos on his YouTube channel called Geschmack Herring, where he reviews herring. The name of the series, Geschmack, is Yiddish for delicious or yummy, and that makes sense given the topic. For many, it's hard to imagine a plate of herring without a surrounding huddle of Zadies, drinking l'chaims, and trading stories from the old country back in Europe, which is why the subject of today's show is such a surprising fit to champion this Ashkenazi dish. Urbach has tasted all kinds of herring since he started doing the herring reviews, from the regular jar of pickled herring that we all know to trying some new flavor combos on the road in Crown Heights, New York, or Israel. Urbach started making these videos during the pandemic just for fun, but now, 2.5 years later, Geschmack Herring is gaining an audience of fans on Instagram and YouTube, and he's got stickers and t-shirts and hoodies, and he's taking a food that used to be the nostalgic snack just for his grandparents' generation and making it cool for hip young foodies like himself.
I've learned that herring really brings people together, especially Jews. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of Jew, like, Mizrahi, Sephardi, Ashkenazi, everyone just wants to come and be in Herring Review and, just want to have herring because they know it's part of the Jewish culture and that's why they enjoy it.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Tuesday, January the 10th, 2023. Welcome to the CJN Daily, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, sponsored by Metropia. Jeremy Urbach is 21. He grew up in a home with 2 doctors as parents. He graduated from CHAT, a private Jewish high school in Toronto. Then he did a year at yeshiva, and he's now studying business at Western University in London, Ontario, where he's also president of the campus Chabad. Urbach's herring reviews showcase a wide range of flavors and guests, from his friends at school to rabbis. He's even tasted herring with Rudy Rockman, the Israeli activist who you might remember being kidnapped in Nigeria while filming some lost Jewish tribesmen. I met Urbach at his family's Toronto home, and I also met his videographer, Avi Teich, who's studying at Queen's University in Kingston. I asked Jeremy to tell us how it all began.
Yeah, sure. So pretty much how it started was after high school, I immediately went to Israel to go to yeshiva at Ashkenazi. And then, when COVID hit after, I was really bored. There wasn't really anything to do, and I was really inspired by, my time in yeshiva. And I like, making videos and being creative. So I guess herring is something really important in my family. So I started making herring videos. And then the whole year in quarantine, I was just making them once a week, just alone. And then all my friends started saying this is funny, can I do one with you? And then, it became a lot bigger, which is really awesome.
You said that it's very important in your family. What does that mean?
So half my family is South African, and herring is a really big thing there, especially chopped herring. And my grandparents always make chopped herring, and we would always eat it. And even just going to shul, since I was a young kid, I was always eating the herring. It was always a big thing, the play with the pickled herring and the toothpicks. And, Kiddush was going on and everyone was going for the rugelach. But me and my sister and my dad were just at the herring table, just eating it all.
Is there a way that South Africans call herring that we don't, like Ashkenazis in Canada? Or it's all just herring?
Chopped herring, yeah.
And is it the exact same way they make it that...
Well, I guess they have regular herring there, but the herring, I know it's a big tradition, it's chopped herring. And what they do is they take pickled herring, they chop it into really small pieces, and they make it with eggs and sometimes pickles. My granny makes it a lot.
Like a chutney? Or relish, a relish. Mm-hmm. So that size.
It's so good.
Oh, okay. And then what, do they spread it? Or you just eat it like egg salad?
You put on kichel, which is the crackers that you eat herring on. Or challah or anything.
So that's the South African way?
Yeah.
And so is there a special Urbach family recipe?
There's no special Urbach herring way. But actually, 2 weeks ago, me and Avi made our own herring. We made chipotle mayo herring.
That's the first time?
Yeah. And it was actually really good.
How did you do that?
So we wanted a chipotle mayo flavor, so we added mayonnaise, chipotle sauce, all sorts of different spices, and we made that sort of base sauce for it. And then we cut up a bunch of plain pickled herring, and mixed it all together and put it in the fridge, and we tried it, and it was actually really
So
good.
like 2 weeks of marinating, or how long?
No,
We had one day of marinating.
yeah.
So that's kind of more like creamed herring.
Yeah, it was creamed herring.
My husband was asking me about whether is creamed herring like permitted, or it has to only be the pickled kind.
No, all herring.
All kinds. How many different kinds are there to make herring?
So many different kinds. I mean, you could just mix herring with any sauce, and then boom, you get the herring.
Sweet or always sour, savory? Like what?
It could be
is there a
sweet,
dessert
savory,
herring?
spicy,
Like Nutella?
But I've had herring that tastes really good, like maple syrupy kind of herring, and it's so sweet and delicious. Like I would eat that for dessert, and for appetizers and the main meal too.
Tell me how you got the name and the idea for the Geschmack.
So Geschmack is a Yiddish word. It means like awesome, and it's kind of like our whole vibe here. And there's also a song called it's a niggin, and it's like a Jewish song called Geschmack to be a Yid, and that's one of my favorite ones. You know, it always gets the people going, and I don't know, Geschmack herring, it just rolls off the tongue.
It's Geschmack to be a Yid, 'cause I'm a new kid. It's Geschmack to be a Yid.
Also, tell me about the health benefits of herring. I'm sure you've researched that well. People eat salmon and they want to have like omega-3 fatty acids, but I was told herring is actually better.
Yeah,
for
well,
you
it's actually,
than
we
many
went
other
to,
fish.
last year we went to the Rebbe's Choice facility in New York, and Rebbe's Choice is a new up-and-coming herring brand, and when we were reviewing herring with him, he was telling us all about the health benefits. So you mentioned like the oils and the fat, like the healthy fats. Herring is in a lot of oil, and oil is actually something that's good for you, and it's good for your brain, especially in the herring itself. There's a lot of omega-3s, which are also really good for your brain. We heard a joke. We went to CHAT, which was our high school, and our old rabbinics teacher told us there was an old Jewish man sitting on a plane with a non-Jewish man, and the Jewish man was eating herring. And then the Jewish man said to the non-Jewish man, he's like, do you want to know how Jews got so smart? It's because we eat herring.
So let's talk about the religious versus like who... Is it only a Jewish thing that people eat herring?
Herring is definitely really big in Judaism, but we've kind of put our own spin on it. Like Avi used to live with this guy from the Netherlands, and we had him on Herring Review, and he said, you know, in the Netherlands they have herring everywhere, and like herring carts.
Like
I think they eat it slightly differently there. I think they more eat it in like raw big fillets, because the herrings are really native to like the North Sea, right? So I guess when you're, you know, in the Netherlands or Denmark or, you know, somewhere where it's very fresh, then you would just eat it sort of in that style, like freshly caught like fillets of herring. I think with most things, like with most Jewish cuisines, like we sort of adopt the cuisine of wherever we're living, but we put our own unique spin on it. I think that's sort of what's been done with herring. It isn't like a particularly Jewish food. But I think the Jewish way of eating it, of the herring that we usually try, is a unique preparation style for the food.
which is the pickled one in the brine.
Yeah.
It could be pickled, it could be in oil, or it could just be in sauce.
Well, it's definitely, I grew up in it in synagogue too, and also the jars. That's what my grandfather would eat, the jars. And I don't know whether you like it with onions or without the onions. Some people just get rid of the onions. Other people like the onions. Thoughts?
No, onions are necessary.
The onions are definitely a pivotal component.
Yes,
Yeah.
you need the crunch. If there's no crunch, it's not that good.
And the herring to onion ratio is a very delicate balance.
There's some herring places that just, you're just buying a tub of onions, and we really don't like that. Like sometimes you buy a whole container and there's 5 pieces of herring and it's full of onions. No, you got to have the proper ratio.
Maybe onions are cheaper too. Let's talk about price. I know everyone's worrying about inflation and how prices have gone up for everything. Is there any impact at all on the cost of herring now?
Yeah, herring's pretty expensive. I mean, it's premium stuff. I think it's around $7 for a container of herring. And sometimes the more premium flavors, like if there's a flavor at Bobby's Bagels, shout out to Bobby's Bagels, one of our favorite herrings is Jaime's Sweet and Spicy Herring, and they use a real maple syrup, and that one's more expensive than the other ones because there's just more work that goes into it.
Is there any herring you tried that is horrible, that you hated?
Herring in Israel is so bad. The herring we've had in Israel is really, really garbage.
Yeah,
Ooh, that's very
and it's weird
controversial.
because in Israel you can find herring like in literally any grocery store, any like convenience store, but it isn't at all up to the quality standard.
Wait, why? Is it because they don't know how to make it, or is it because they do different flavors that you don't used to, or what?
I don't know. Why do we think? Because we go to New York, and the herring's amazing in New York, but in Israel it's not, so I don't know.
The flavors weren't creative. It was just like very salty,
Very
like
salty.
plain herring.
Yeah.
So too salty.
Yeah, they
way too
don't really
salty.
do like the cream herrings or like the creative flavoring. They just sort of do like plain salty herring.
Yeah. No, I'm sure there are people in Israel who can make very good herring. We haven't found them yet. We will. But the herring we found, like that we can get it in the hotels or at the shuk, is it's not up to par.
All right, so listeners who are in Israel, you have to send the Gishmak herring people some good places
Yes.
for them to try it, and this is a challenge now. The gauntlet or the sardine tin has been thrown, right? So you had influencers on your show, Rudy from Israel. You've had herring makers. Who else have you had that's super famous?
Well, we had this guy, the Kosher King, who's like a Toronto legend, Shlomo Asayag. He goes around Toronto reviewing kosher food, and he really wanted to be on the show, and that was a really good episode. We're going to have him back for sure.
Who do you want that you haven't got yet?
The number one guest I want is Denny Avdia, who he's an Israeli. He's in the NBA on the Washington Wizards. He got drafted 3 years ago, and he's the only Israeli in the NBA. And yeah, he's like kind of my hero. So I would love to review herring with him.
And what did the Haredi or ultra-Orthodox people think about this? That you went down to Brooklyn and you were doing it on the streets with rebbes and you talked to them. What did they think about your doing?
They think it's funny.
They love it. I think they love it. I think they think it's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My first ever review was with the Chabad rabbis of Newmarket. Yeah, they thought it was funny. And a lot of them, especially Chabad, which is a lot, like we were around Chabad a lot, they don't eat herring in the week. They only eat it on Saturday for lunch. But sometimes we can convince them to eat herring with us.
Really? Oh, you can't just have it if you feel like on top of a salad. No, it's only a Shabbat thing.
Yeah, they're like, we grew up eating Shabbat lunch. We don't have it any other time of the week.
I mean, when we were in Crown Heights, surrounded by all Chabadniks, we would like generate like a crowd around us, all watching us do the reviews. So I think they find it's something that like they've probably never seen before, is like some like non-Haredi kids walking around reviewing herring with people, but I think they love it. They think.
Well, that's an interesting question that you bring up, because how do you bridge that gap? I mean,
we just don't really think about the divisions in Judaism. Like, there's a lot of people say like Haredi, Ashkenazi, Sephardi. We just kind of say like we're all Yidden. So we always say what's going on Yidden. So at the end of the day, herring is something for all Jews.
now you talked about you had a Dutch friend. Was his friend Jewish?
No, he was not.
So let's talk about, you've had non-Jews on your show.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And do they know about herring?
Yeah, well, they don't really know. They don't usually know about herring unless they're European, like Tees was. But yeah, some of the non-Jews are not European and they don't know about herring until we do the herring review, and they love herring. They actually, usually, on average, non-Jews give higher ratings than Jews.
Is there any herring besides this stuff that you were talking about that you should recommend people try? If they're going to take a little step into the herring world, how ease them in? What should they try first and next to get the idea?
You should try Feature Foods pickled herring fillets. It's I always say it's the beginner herring. It's what I grew up eating at shul. It's really good. The flavor is great. The texture is great. And then once you've tried that, I would go for any honey mustard herring, because I find people like honey mustard.
What do your family think about this?
I don't know. I think when I started doing it, they were just like, oh, Jeremy's doing something. He's one of his shenanigans. But I think now they kind of like it. They all wear the shirts and the sweaters. So.
Do they actually all eat herring, or is anyone?
Everyone in my family loves herring.
Yeah, I would say the Urbach family is probably the biggest herring family I've seen.
Yeah,
I mean, even like when we made our homemade herring the other week, and then his little sister came home and tried it, and his mom tried it, and they both loved it. Like, I don't think in my family, I don't think everyone in my family would be that into it, but the Urbachs definitely are.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any anti-Semitism about it in your life? About being so outwardly Jewish?
No, I just think usually we're really humble. Like, we always try to stay humble, but I think when people see us reviewing herring, they're always like, "Whoa, those guys are so cool. So how could we possibly be anti-Semitic to them?"
It's more of a foodie type of audience, I suppose, right? As opposed to a pro-Palestinian, anti-Palestinian. I mean, I don't mean to lead on it. I'm just asking.
No, obviously, we support Israel, and that's our most important thing to our hearts. But, we also just eat herring, and we try to be menches.
Also, when we were in Israel, we tried to do reviews with Palestinians. We couldn't organize one, but we were close at one point. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it sort of is something that transcends ethnicity, religion, backgrounds. It's food. Everyone, it's like sitting down like a Jew and a Palestinian for hummus. It's food. We can all bond over it.
Mm-hmm.
That reminds me of asking you, is there any particular thing you think people should drink with eating herring?
The Chabad people would say always vodka, like they're big on vodka. But you know how I grew up, I said my dad's in the Scotch club, they always have Scotch with herring. So yeah, I would pair Scotch with herring. Also beer. Beer is a great option.
I want you to teach me how you start. What you do when you do your recordings, you have like a special kind of opening shtick that you do. So I would love you to do it for us.
Yeah, so pretty much like what we do is we have our phone set up, filming the area we're going to film. Then we walk in the camera and we do like the signature herring review. It's 2 claps, herring review, 1 word for each clap.
All right, so let's do it together. 1, 2, 3. Herring review. Okay, I should do CJN Daily.
Yeah, you might need more claps, like CJN Daily.
There you go, CJN Daily. And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. Integrity, community, quality, and customer care. Today's listener shout-out goes to the Jewish community in London, Ontario. And here's why. Remember in December I did an episode about an artist who makes those iconic blue metal moose menorahs? And I told you that Nancy Clark isn't Jewish, and despite being a sought-after Judaica artist in London, she told us she'd never actually lit the candles or even been invited to light them. Well, the Jewish Federation in London jumped into action, and they invited Nancy and her husband as special guests to light candles with them on the 5th night of Hanukkah. 2 community members brought along their own moose menorahs to light that night at the JCC. The executive director of the Federation, Rob Negus, showed Nancy the ropes, and everyone sang the blessings, including a Shehechayanu to mark Nancy's first Hanukkah experience. Nicely done, London. If you missed that episode, I've put the link in our show notes. Thanks again for listening to the CJN Daily. If you want to support us, go to the link in our show notes and donate to the CJN through Canada Helps. You'll get a tax receipt, charitable tax receipt. Talk to you tomorrow.